The Reds have been linked to some prominent starting pitchers in the MLB trade deadline rumor mill. Can they get Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease, or Eduardo Rodriguez? We'll tell you on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds. Thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we are free and available on all podcasting platforms. We are your team every day. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr, and we are diehard baseball fans. We have a passion for the Cincinnati Reds. We have taken our love of the game, our passion for baseball, and we have turned that passion into information for you. We want to thank those of you that listen every day. If you're an everydayer, get in those comment sections. Let us know what you like about this Reds team. Hit us up on Twitter. We want to talk baseball with you. On today's podcast, we have so much to cover. The trade deadline is just one day away, and we're going to take a look at who is left that the Reds should go after or could go after in a deadline deal, depending on where you land on what it is that they should do. The Redlegs secured another series win over the weekend, taking 2 of 3 from the mighty Los Angeles Dodgers out at Chavez Ravine, and are once again back in first place in the National League Central as they head to Chicago for a 4-game set. Jonathan India has landed on the injured list. That's a big deal. That's big news. We're going to get into that a little bit. And David Bell, the captain, the skipper, the boss man, he gets himself an extension. He's going to be sticking around through at least 2026. Jeff, there is a lot of information that we're going to have to try and shoehorn into this show. Let's start with just 24 hours remaining before the Major League Baseball trade deadline. It looks like the Texas Rangers and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, Southern California, Orange County, Northern Mexico have gone out and are trying to pluck every pitcher available off the market right now. If the Reds are going to do something, they better move quick.
Yeah, there's been a lot of movement, and none of it's been from the Reds. In fact, even the Cardinals have gotten involved in the movement. Now, moving players out, not trading for anyone, but trading away players like we kind of thought they might. The Reds have been linked to a number of guys that, let's be honest, I didn't think we'd be linked to. Now, it's possible that there's just some amount of conversation and it hasn't gone very deep, but there's been a couple of interesting notes. And I want to start first with the man who's won 3 Cy Youngs. That's 2 more Cy Youngs than the Reds have in my lifetime, and 2 more Cy Youngs than the Reds have ever had. Justin Verlander. In fact, it was confirmed by Jeremy Booth. He is a MLB reporter for KHOU, that he said the Reds are a potential landing spot for Justin Verlander. In fact, he even said in a tweet, "Ask from Reds is thought to include one Cam Collier, the 2022 first-round pick for the Cincinnati Reds." So let's start there, because we're going to look at a couple of guys. We're going to look at Verlander, Dylan Cease, and Eduardo Rodriguez, the ace for the Detroit Tigers, who used to pitch quite a bit for the Boston Red Sox. But we're going to look at each 3 of these guys and look at which is more likely. So in a vacuum, Justin Verlander coming to Cincinnati is kind of strange. But consider this. The Reds are bona fide contenders. You add Justin Verlander to this rotation, they're bona fide. And this seems like a deal that the Reds could get done, especially for the fact that the Mets are in sell mode. They've already traded away Max Scherzer. They've already traded away their closer in David Robertson. There are rumors out there that Mark Canha, Tommy Pham, on the move again, maybe a couple of other guys. Are they really going to hold on to Justin Verlander?
I don't think so. Something important to remember is I think that Verlander has 1 additional year on that contract, something in the neighborhood of $40 million. If you didn't catch it, Sam LaCure and I talked a lot about Justin Verlander in that bonus interview that I had dropped over the weekend. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. Sam had a lot of things to say about Verlander, and one of them is this: Justin Verlander is an experienced playoff pitcher that moves the needle. If you're going to trade a talent that is equal to Cam Collier, that's what you need to be getting in return. A needle moving, experienced veteran, game 1 of a playoff series starter. That's what you get with Justin Verlander. Listen, Verlander's 40 years old, and that would make me gun shy on anybody else we were talking about. But let's not forget his age 39 season, last season for the Houston Astros. He was 18-4 with a 1.75 ERA in 28 starts. This is a guy that's still doing it at an elite level. For the Mets this season, a little bit worse on the record. He's 5-5, 3.24 ERA in 15 starts. That's 89 innings pitched, Jeff. But the Mets have been not that great, and he's still putting up numbers that would make this rotation instantly better, would make this team instantly credible, would make the Cincinnati Reds the favorite to win the National League Central, in my opinion, moving forward through the rest of the baseball season.
Now, to be fair, I kind of took this and ran with it to say that Cam Collier was the guy that was the trade piece going back to the Mets. There might have been another person because the tweet did say part of the return be Cam Collier. But if he's the headliner, you would expect you wouldn't be hearing Noelvi Marte or Edwin Arroyo or guys that are above him in that capacity. I think if that's the deal, I'm taking that 100% of the time. Look, I get it. Cam Collier is a lot of talent. He's got a very bright future, and some people have been to talk about statistics in Daytona. I don't care about what his statistics in Daytona are. He's got the tools. He's going to develop into the player that we think he can, at least somewhat of the player we think he can be, even on the low end of the what's likely to happen for him. Even still, this solidifies the rotation. That's what Nick Krall is setting out to do with this trade deadline. If he can do it, that he should do that. So I think that it's definitely worth a look. The biggest question is, and you and Sam LeCure did talk about this, would Sam LeCure waive that no trade clause to come to Cincinnati? I don't know that.
Would Verlander waive his no trade clause?
Did I say Scherzer?
Sam, you said Sam LeCure. He already waived his. Yeah. He already waived his no trade clause.
Yeah, but would Verlander waive his no trade clause to come to Cincinnati? And that is a question that I don't think anybody can answer except for Justin Verlander and maybe Kate Upton. I don't know. She might be able to answer that for him, although it would be nice to see Kate Upton in a Reds jersey. But when it comes to Justin Verlander, I really think that at the end of the day, that is a guy I would go get because I don't think there's as many strings attached as there are with the next two guys we're going to talk about.
Yeah, let's get into a couple more names. I don't want to use up this whole segment on Verlander, although I would be really happy to get Verlander. And just to really quickly piggyback on the Cam Collier thing, no, I don't think it would be a 1-for-1. There would be other pieces to this. But if those other pieces are Reese Hines, if those other pieces are even a Chase Petty, maybe, I don't know. I mean, you have to look at that. Next on the list, though, Jeff, is Dylan Cease. And the White Sox had said that Cease wasn't going anywhere, but it's starting to look like that may not necessarily be true. This looks like this also comes from Twitter, and a Dylan Cease. This
is from MLB.com, actually. Yeah.
From MLB.com, thanks. The Reds would be getting Dylan Cease. White Sox, the proposed package would be Jonathan India, Edwin Arroyo, Chase Petty, and Jay Allen. I don't know. This to me is a little bit of a harder pill to swallow there, Jeff. And especially now that Jonathan India has landed on the injured list, which we will get to a little bit later in the show, could complicate putting together a package. One thing that's important to remember, and it's what we've been saying now for the last couple weeks, pitching is expensive at the deadline, and it's going to cost a lot to get these guys.
It's a good thing I was already sitting down because if you'd have given me that trade proposal and I was standing up, I would have fallen because that's a lot. And I get it. Dylan Cease is going to cost a lot because he is a good pitcher with multiple years. I think he's got 2 more years of control, not just 1. So yes, Jonathan India has to be a part of that deal with his multiple years of control, but also the girth of talent that the Reds would have to give up and their prospects just not going. That's going to hurt, I think, with the deal. Now, again, that's 2 more years on top of this year with an ace, a bona fide ace that you would add to Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and all that other stuff. The question for me would be, how necessary is that? Now, that would make the rotation absolutely fantastic, but do you really need to go out and get an ace? I feel like they could get a pitcher in the next tier and not trade as much, because while Cam Collier, high level talent, and yes, we'd be giving that up in a hypothetical deal for Justin Verlander, we're not giving up that many prospects in this one. We're giving up quality and quantity.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about Cease. You know, this season for the White Sox, again, the White Sox are who they are, but Cease has made 22 starts. That leads baseball at 22 games started right now. He's 4-4, 4.15 ERA. He's thrown 119 innings already, and he's done it very, very well. All of the positives that you just mentioned, multiple years of team control, a legitimate, another guy that we can include in that ace conversation amongst a lot of pitchers the Reds will have that could be considered an ace. He checks all the boxes, but I think the price tag at this point, this is one of those trades, Jeff, that I feel like could have the potential to derail the plan a little bit when you have to pay that much to bring in a pitcher. So for me, would I be okay with Verlander, with who we talked about? Yes. Short-term deal. Maybe he's here one more year. They'd have to pay through the nose to keep him the one more year, but it doesn't derail the plan. This feels a little bit different. And I'm not sure that if they're going to expend the prospect capital like this, that it needs to be for an ace starting pitcher. There's a couple other holes if they're really going to go out and spend some capital that I would rather see them fill, because we have 4 legitimate, quality major league starters that will be in this rotation next season, whether they make a move for a pitcher or not.
And there's one other guy, and this one's intriguing to me because he has had a very good year statistically, but he's also dealing with some injuries, and he has a strange contract clause that would have to be worked out, and that is Eduardo Rodriguez. He has torn it up for the Detroit Tigers. Ever since they signed him, he has been the ace that they've been looking for. However, he is dealing with a strange ligament injury in his finger on his pitching hand. I believe it's in his index finger. And then he also has this clause that he can opt out of his contract at the end of this year. So there's a lot of contingencies that would come with acquiring Eduardo Rodriguez. We'd have to know that, yes, he's getting ready to come back, or he's going to be healthy for a playoff run. And we would need to know that he's not going to opt out at the end of the season, because if you're getting a guy that's just basically a damaged rental, then you better not be trading very much for him. And I can't imagine the Tigers are pulling the trigger on a deal that they're not getting much for when it comes to Eduardo Rodriguez.
And you'd have to remember the whole thought process behind going and get a starter right now is an immediate fix to a rotation that has fixes coming. If we were waiting for a hurt pitcher to be back, then we could just wait for Green and Lodolo. The Tigers, however, it's interesting to me because the Tigers, we've talked about being a potential trade partner for the Reds, but not going with Rodriguez, but instead a reunion tour with Michael Lorenzen.
And there's been no rumors for that at all.
Mm-hmm.
He's been linked with the Rays. He's been linked with, I think, the going back to the Angels, ironically, or the Dodgers or something like that, but he's not been linked to the Reds at all, which is kind of surprising to me.
So for me, where I think this lands, I would like to see the Reds go get a starter, but it has to make sense with Nick Krall's plan. I would like to see a trade that brings back a reliever as well. It would be great if they could go just find a package and bring 2 guys back in a deal. That would be optimal for me. My long-term prediction, what's going to happen over the next 24 hours, Jeff, I think we get a reliever from somebody. I think we're going to fall short on a starting pitcher unless this Verlander thing. It's going to be Verlander or none of these guys. That's where I predict on this one.
And just to add a little bit of fuel to that fire, there was a report in The Athletic that ever since Max Scherzer was traded, Justin Verlander is reassessing his commitment to the Mets for the rest of his contract. So that might be intriguing. He might just out and ask for a trade. We'll have to see how that plays out. But one thing is for certain, the Reds are very active this deadline. Something's going to happen. I don't necessarily know how big. I keep going back and forth as to whether I think it's going to be that big trade, but Nick Krall is going to make the right move. That we know. We also know that this Reds team has been fun, regardless of what they do at the deadline, and they have a real shot to win the division regardless of what they do at the deadline. They showed why over the weekend. We'll discuss that coming up next. Before we talk about that, though, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. That is FanDuel. You can take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets. up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to over-unders to who you think's going to hit the first home run in the game. Speaking of over-unders, the Reds and the Cubs today's over-under is at 8, Steve. You've got Marcus Stroman on the mound. He's pretty good. You got Andrew Abbott on the mound. He's really good. But none of the first 3 games between these two teams in late May at Wrigley Field had less than 9 total runs in any one game.
Take the over.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe take the over. And you can do this all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is an official partner of Major League Baseball. And remember, if you cannot be at Wrigley Field or at the ballpark, wherever the Reds are at the ballpark, you can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search the word Reds. And thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day. Coming up tomorrow, every dayers, we will see a deadline deal. I know it. I feel it in my bones. Maybe. We'll see. Make sure you keep it tuned to Locked On Reds, and we'll keep you up to date as to whether or not that happens and what they look like. If we hear about some swings and misses, if we hear about some deals that we're like, yeah, glad that we missed on that. We'll be talking all about that right here on Locked On Reds. But you know what, Steve? Let's focus back on the field because the Reds were dominant on Sunday. In fact, really looked like they were in control of this entire series over the Dodgers in the own ballpark.
Yeah, a lot of what we said needed to happen during this series came to be or came very, very close to be freaking robbed home run. A lot of things happened that we said we needed to have happen. And I want to start with Graham Ashcraft because we were wondering, is good Graham Ashcraft back? Did he figure it out? Does he know what's going on? Yes, good Graham Ashcraft is back in this rotation. Yeah, he has figured out what kind of pitcher he needed to be. He was trying to be an overpowering strikeout pitcher, and that was not working for him. He went back to being the guy that is pitch efficient, that lets the defense work for him and gets him out of innings. In that start, he went 6 innings, Jeff. He allowed 5 hits, no runs. He only struck out 2 dudes. Here's the keys. He walked nobody, and he only threw 85 pitches in those 6 innings. 60 of those were for strikes. So Graham Ashcraft has figured out. He is back. He is somebody we can count on the rest of the way in this Reds rotation for the 2023 baseball season.
I really believe, like, if that game was actually close, if that game was actually like a tense situation, that David Bell would have left him in there. But he didn't need to. He didn't need to go throw 7 innings. He had a chance to get some bullpen work for some guys that have been struggling lately, and it was nice to see those guys at least keep the scoreboard clean. But yes, overall, I mean, I was already kind of, announcing him back into the circle of trust. He is firmly within that circle.
One of the other things that I said when we talked about this series, Jeff, was that I needed to see some power from the left-handers. I needed them to tee off on these right-handers in the Dodgers rotation that aren't necessarily their best starting pitchers. And I predicted 2 home runs from Joey Votto. He nearly did that yesterday. He got the one. Nearly got me the second one. He got robbed. But, on the day, 3 RBIs, a couple of hits. He had a couple of walks in one of the games before earlier in the series. Joey Votto is going to be just fine. 2 for 11 overall, couple walks, a homer, 3 RBIs. I will take it. Brandon Williamson also was the guy we said we needed him to be. You and I talked about this. We said we didn't need him to go out there and completely overpower this Dodgers lineup. We didn't think that was a reasonable ask. We needed him to be a 4th or 5th starter. We needed him to try and get a quality start. We needed him to keep the Dodgers limited to a couple of runs and allow the Reds to do their thing. What did he do? 5 2/3 inning pitched, 2 earned runs, and he minimized the damage from the 4 walks that he allowed. Now, that's a bit of a high walk total that I don't want to see that a lot, but managed to pitch around it. So Brandon Williamson was exactly what we needed him to be, a 4th or 5th guy that gave his team a chance to win, and they did.
And there's a great quote from Sam LeCure in your chat with him from Saturday, which, by the way, if you have not listened or watched Steve's chat with Sam LeCure, you got to go check that out. But he had mentioned, like, Brandon Williamson, he hasn't seen him fall down yet and see how he, dusts himself back off from a bad start. I'm not saying this was a bad start. I mean, he was 1 out away from a quality start, but those 4 walks, kind of like you mentioned, like, I think there's microcosms in a baseball season, whether it's, a short stretch of games, it's one really bad game. How do you come back from that? I think even within this start, you can look at those 4 walks and you say, boy, if you were a little bit more pitch efficient, you're going to hit Jeff's bold prediction of saying that Brandon Williamson would get a quality start. But more than that, you would be able to pitch into the 7th inning. Who knows? Maybe you get 1 or 2 more outs into the 7th, and you're talking about one of the best starts of his short career at this point. But I think that's just another lesson that he needs to take from this. Next start, hoping to see a lot less walks. I'll tell you this, though, Steve. Elly De La Cruz, he ends the series with 6 hits, which is basically 2 hits in every game, which is basically what my bold prediction.
Nope.
You're not going to give that to me?
It does not work that way, sir. But Elly De La Cruz, in fact, had himself a day yesterday going 4 for 5 deaths. That put him for 6 for 14 on the series with a home run. An absolute no-doubter at Dodger Stadium yesterday. Elly De La Cruz did a thing.
And I want to put this out there to all the visiting fans. Please chant overrated whenever Elly comes up to the plate. Please boo this man, because he's gonna absolutely eat your lunch when you do it. Dodgers fans were chanting overrated in his second at bat, and he about left Chavez Ravine with his home run. He hit the thing so hard and so far. So yeah, you keep on going and chanting all that crap because you guys don't know anything, because Elly is a boss.
Couple other guys that really had themselves a nice weekend as well, Jeff. Both Matt McLain and Jake Fraley hit 400 on this weekend series.
Yes.
Matt McLain going 4 for 10 with a base on balls, a homer, couple RBIs. Jake Fraley 4 for 10, a homer, 3 RBIs, and a stolen base. It's just nice to see the offense clicking. That's exactly what we needed from them to go up against this Dodgers lineup that is just dangerous at every turn and keep the Reds in games. And they did the things. They did what we expected them to do. And they continue to do that against everybody that's not the Milwaukee Brewers. So I think that this will let us all now take a breath and relax a little bit. The Reds are back in first place and they're moving in the right direction.
And to add to this zen of positivity that we are creating with this segment, the Reds now have entered the land of positive run differential overall on the season. So even with all of the negativity that the Milwaukee Brewers brought to this season, the Reds are still positive. So just like this podcast, no matter how much negativity you find in the year, the Reds are on top of it and remaining positive.
This is another positive that I know. I can see the over just over the horizon. We're going to hit the over here in just a couple weeks, Jeff. We don't. Big exciting news. Listen, some other things happened over the course of this weekend since we last talked to all of our listeners. David Bell has been extended. Jonathan India has landed on the injured list, and we have some things to say about that. And we're going to talk about those things coming up right after this. Remember that if you can't be at the ballpark, you can catch every pitch of the Reds hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. You can also follow this podcast on all platforms, including YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you've clicked that notification bell so that you get notified when we go live, when we do special live shows, when surprise interviews drop into the feed over the weekend, like this weekend with Sam LeCure. You'll get notified of all those things. Click those buttons, baby. You can also join us on Discord. The link for our Discord server is down in the description of the show. Lots of great Reds conversation over there. We hope you can join us to talk some baseball, because as we say, we love talking baseball with you. All right, Jeff. Lots of things happened since we recorded our last episode on Friday. Let's start with the bad one, and then we'll work our way into what we think is the good one. So the bad one is that Reds second baseman, former rookie of the year, Jonathan India, finds himself on the injured list with plantar fasciitis. And I don't know how much that hurts, but I have heard from people that hurts. So I feel bad for Jonathan India. From a Reds perspective, this is pretty bad timing if they were looking to package him in a deal to bring a pitcher, as we talked about earlier in the show. That could derail certain trade talks if Jonathan India is not 100%.
I don't necessarily know how deep the Reds had gotten to conversations with other teams about trading him this deadline season. I look at him more as a off-season trade piece, and probably that's what's going to happen if they do end up dealing him. This is intriguing to me, though, because he said, I'm going to be back in 9 days. I'll be ready to be back in 9 days. Basically saying that however long this is supposed to take for everyone else, it's only going to take 9 days for me. I find this interesting because Jonathan India is wont to play hurt. He does not mind playing through injuries. Here's the problem with that this year. They don't need him to. In fact, they can kind of survive without him. That's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people are feeling like the Reds should go ahead and pull the trigger on some sort of trade where India is involved, because the roster kind of can function pretty decently without him. And we saw it yesterday. The up-the-middle combination of Elly De La Cruz and Matt McLain is just a thing of beauty. And as much as Jonathan India means to this ball club, he doesn't have to rush himself back. He doesn't have to come back and play hurt. We said it last year whenever it really wasn't that true because they didn't have anybody to really replace him. This year they do. And I feel like if he feels the need, if he feels the urge to play hurt, he should fight that urge.
And, here's the thing with Jonathan India being out of the lineup. It really does give the other players some time to adjust to a potential absence of him.
Yes.
It gives the fans some time to see what the team looks like. And because Jonathan India is on the injured list, it freed up a roster spot, and a little outfield help has arrived in the form of Stuart Fairchild joining the team from Louisville. Fairchild's been streaky. He's had runs of great games followed by runs of not so great games. And I hope that it's a few runs of great games to provide a little bit more outfield depth, because with India out of the lineup, we're going to see Spencer Steer more on the infield than in left field.
Yeah, because you basically have Newman and McLain that would play second base mostly. Spencer Steer played some second base at the end of Sunday's game, but Sunday's game ended up weird anyway. I mean, Miguel Rojas, guy who was playing, I think, third for the Dodgers. It was third base or shortstop, one of the two. I forgot. But he ended up pitching the final inning for them. That's just how bad the scoreboard was. But I think overall you're mainly going to see McLain play second base, and then the very rare chances that you see him out of the game, Kevin Newman will probably end up playing second base there. So it's going to be, I think, a perfect encapsulation of what the future may look like, because we have said, and most people that have looked at Matt McLain has said, he's going to end up at second base. And this is going to be the time where we get to see that happen.
All right, let's move on to wrap things up on a positive note. At least you and I think it's a positive note. There's going to definitely be some people in the comments that don't think that this is a positive note. But the Cincinnati Reds extended David Bell. They gave him a shiny 3-year contract extension, keeping him a member of the Cincinnati Reds through 2026. I've said it a couple times now, Jeff. I think this is a good move. I think that you had to do this. David Bell has navigated his way through a couple trash seasons with players that didn't deserve to be in the major leagues, with the rug pulled out from under him at every turn, with PowerPoint presentations saying that the team's never going to compete. David Bell has survived all of that and now has a winner on his hands. So I think this is absolutely the right move for the franchise to give David Bell some security, to show a little bit of a commitment and extend David. And it makes me happy too, given the very quiet departure of Buddy Bell from the Reds organization just a few weeks ago. It makes me feel better that there was no shenanigans going on now that we've seen David Bell extended.
Right, because let's face it, the promotion that we were surmising might happen, quote unquote promotion, would not necessarily be that, I think, for David Bell. I think he's grown very accustomed to the managerial spot. And another great tease to the Sam LeCure conversation. Sam LeCure really talks about how he is in the clubhouse, how he is when the camera is not on him, when people are not watching him, and why he is such a good manager to all the players. And the moment that we say that, his detractors' eyes glaze over. So let me help you out with this. If you are a detractor of David Bell, tell me what manager took a 100-loss team to a division championship. Nobody. That's never happened in the history of baseball. The Reds have a legitimate shot to do that this year. And I feel like if you do that, he is absolutely 3 years might be too short. He's going to get the NL Manager of the Year award if the Reds end up winning the division. And even if they fall just a little bit short, he's still going to have an amazing argument for it because of the job that he has done with this young team. And I loved, because they asked Nick Kroll about this the other day after the extension happened, I loved what he had to say about David Bell and the job that he has done this season.
David's done a great job. His coaching staff's done a great job this year. We came in and it was about growing, and we've done that. We've created a good culture around our Major League clubhouse. We've integrated a lot of young players into our Major League team and continue to grow, and players get better, coaches get better, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, I think the coaching staff overall has done, obviously a reflection on David, but the coaching staff overall has done a great job just helping young players get better and continue to get better at the Major League level. David took it as a challenge to make sure that he was going to create the best culture he could coming into the season. This is something we sat down and talked about, and he had plans for in the off season, and then just started doing things in spring training, and those one thing led to another, and it's really taken off with this group of players. I'm excited about where we are, and I'm excited about where we're going. Are we there yet? No. Do we still have work to do? Yeah, we do. But at the same time, it's been a lot of fun to watch these players grow, these coaches grow, and our team and our organization get better. And it's from the minor leagues all the way to the big leagues.
What did we hear in spring training? We heard David Bell, we heard Joey Votto, we heard Jonathan India all talking about we've got to hit the ground running. We've got to be focused and ready to go from day one. And while they did still have kind of that growing period, that was that period where they didn't have Matt McLain and Ellie De La Cruz on the roster. Whenever those guys got up here, we all felt as though they'd been part of the team forever. We all felt as though they were grizzled vets that have done this. And I think that a huge reason for that not only is just their own personalities and their own player abilities, but it's David Bell as well. David Bell empowered these guys to do what they are doing right now.
No, and I'm so excited to see David Bell have the security to know that this team's not going to get taken away from him and handed off to somebody else. Right. After he did the hard parts, after he stuck around here for that 100-loss season, I would have hate to have seen that. I'm excited for Bell to be around. I think it was the right move at the right time. Sam LeCure talked about how players feel about their first manager. And there's all these rookies on the team right now that David Bell is their first manager. And I think that not only is it great to have that security for David, I think it's great to have that for all of these rookies to know that for the next 3 years, the philosophy is not going to change. The way they're doing things is not going to change. What's expected of them is not going to change. And that they're going to have a person that's going to advocate for them along the way. I think that will create, more and more and more, building that winning culture, building that winning clubhouse, making players want to be here. All of those pieces are fed by the right guy at the top. And I think right now we've got the right guy at the top.
I think it's important to note too, everybody always makes the point of, man, these Reds just look fun. David Bell's at the top of that. David Bell is one of the leading reasons for that. As much as you or I may find his post-game press conferences to be snooze fest, put you to sleep, I can't listen to them for very long. There's a reason we don't use clips from them for very many times, because let's face it, nobody really wants to listen to this for, longer than that period of time that I just did that impression. So when it comes to David Bell, know this, what this team is, he has driven that personality, which far and away makes this 3-year extension well worth it.
And on that note, that's where we're going to go ahead and wrap up this jam-packed edition of Locked On Reds. We did it just a little bit over. We got it all in. Before we get out of here, don't forget that you can catch every pitch of the Reds hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just download the app and search the word Reds.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day. Every dayers coming up on tomorrow's show. It's trade deadline time. Will the Reds make a move? Make sure you keep it tuned right here to Locked On Reds, as we'll keep you covered. We'll have emergency podcasts for any trades. You can bet if Justin Verlander gets traded here, we're going to pull Steve right out of the emergency room, tell him all those patients can wait, because we got to talk about Justin Verlander coming to Cincinnati. I'm sure they're really going to like that too. So you make sure you keep it tuned to Locked On Reds every single day. I hit the wrong one again.
Jeffrey, you're looking at that picture of Kate Upton.
Well,